Welcome everybody. This is the future of Drupal parenthesis core in the age of Drupal CMS. So I submitted the talk as the future of Drupal core, but then I realized that you can't really talk about the future of Drupal core without the future of everything else. So let's try to do that. I am Gábor Hojtsy. My made-up title for myself is Full Stack Community Organizer, which is a thing that I don't think that really exists. So I do talks like this. I'm involved with events. I'm one of the organizers of this event. I do social media for a lot of different things. I do videos for the Dries note and for like marketing videos, like for the Drupal 11 release. I do blog posts, I write code I maintain upgrade status and deprecation status and POTX module and a bunch of other modules. So I'm a full stack community organizer. So I try to enable people to do different things, and hopefully this talk will also be an enabler for you. I'm both on the Drupal core and the CMS leadership team, so I have insights into both teams, and I have more than 2 decades of Drupal core contribution experience. I started off in 2003. So the first thing when I submitted this talk that I've seen somebody post online is, I knew it, Drupal core is going away. Not true. So the first thing that I would like to leave you with is that Drupal core is not going away. So I think Dries said this yesterday, but if you weren't here or you may not have internalized the thought, is that Drupal core is not going to be discontinued. Drupal CMS is built on top of Drupal core. It's not a separate thing. It's built on top of Drupal core. It's Drupal core and a bunch of other things. The reason we did Drupal CMS is because we couldn't achieve some of the goals that we had with Drupal core. And so the goals that we had for Drupal CMS were that site builders without Drupal experience could easily build and launch open source Drupal sites. And we were trying to do this in Drupal core for a long time. It didn't really work out. And we did some research in 2019 to compare the experience of different systems. You may have seen the slide from Dries. He presented this in one of the Dries notes. And what we found is that the initial experience of people with Drupal is very bad. They don't like this. It's very complicated. Why do you need this complexity? Yesterday, I was at dinner with Laurie, and he was basically reciting the same story, that he couldn't understand, like, why do you need all of this complexity to achieve what you want? However, as time goes on, and you have more and more requirements that you need to fulfill on the project, then you kind of realize that, okay, I need this complexity, and now it's great that Drupal has all of these possibilities in there. We have a bunch of other systems. People realize that that's not really possible anymore, what they wanted. They buy the plugin from WordPress that did what they needed, and then they figure out that they have their data in that plugin and they can't use the data in another way that they wanted, or bump into certain limitations in other systems. So we are very good when people know what they want to do with Drupal. We score very good there, but the beginner experience is very bad. And so we wanted to elevate the beginner experience and make that better. But then we realized that we bump into certain limitations there. So most sites use Drupal, and we as core committers were looking at Drupal core and making it nice. And as Dries said yesterday, he used to have these keynotes that are like, this is coming to Drupal core, and it was all about Drupal core. But what we realized is that you are not using Drupal core only. So who's using more than 100 extensions on Drupal sites? Anyone? Yeah, it's like about a third of the audience uses more than 100 extensions on certain sites. So even if you don't use 100 extensions, you use 50, 30, 20, as a lot of stuff that is on top of Drupal core. And that's your experience of Drupal core and a lot of extensions. And the Drupal core committers, we didn't used to look at that because we were looking at core and improving core. But your experience of Drupal is much bigger. However, there's a significant experience required to pick those 100 things. And you need to know which things to pick for it to be flexible and sustainable and upgradable and all the things. And a lot of people don't have that experience, especially when they start out. they get Drupal core and they're like, okay, but now what? This is in one way too complex and in another way too basic for what I need. At the same time, Drupal core is still very developer focused, which is not a problem, honestly, it's good. It's great for developers, they can build new things based on those APIs. But for a lot of even basic, simple usability things, you need to install additional projects, like have a linking experience in CK Editor that you can just type in the name of the entity that you want to link to, not in core. Or having nice path aliases automatically, not in core. Like very basic things are not in core. And then Drupal core is slow to change. So we've been trying to build new big things in Drupal core. It's very hard to get in. And your experience is you don't really care that much if it's in Drupal core or not, because if the project needs it, you're going to get it from contrib and you're going to use it, right? That's what the project ends up at the end. So we've been looking at the wrong thing, and we need to look at something else. So what we figured out is there's this big gap between Drupal core only and the live Drupal website that you actually have. And it's very hard to get from here to there. And so what if we put something in the middle and help you out there? And that's what Drupal CMS is. So Drupal CMS is Drupal core and plus a bunch of things that helps you get there faster. So these are the things that I like to highlight, that we have the best practice default features, because we can bottle up a bunch of the experience that you need to have to pick those 100 extensions, pick a bunch of them for you, and show you what are the best practice ones. It has improved user experience, because we can pick out these things that should be the default experience, but they're not. We made it easier to add more features, so it's easier to find and add features in Drupal CMS than in Drupal core. And we have AI site building capabilities. And this is the one line about AI in the talk. No more AI. So because there's a lot of cool things in Drupal CMS and in Drupal, even without AI. So if you think about AI, it's amazing. But then there's a lot of cool other things. And then what we did is we made this the default download experience, because we want you to start off with this, because we bottled up all of this experience, and we put this on Drupal.org as the first thing to download. We still offer Drupal core, but this is for like if you really won't know what you're doing, you can use Drupal core. If you want to start off, we offer Drupal CMS, because this bundles up a lot of experience that you have. And I don't think people quite realize the extent of change and side effects that this could have, the positive extent of change and side effects this could have. But this is what the talk is about. So hopefully at the end, you'll have a lot of ideas about all the tentacles that this decision has in the community. So the first component that we have in Drupal CMS, and it's also honestly in Drupal core with 10.3, but we started using it very heavily with Drupal CMS, and we popularized it with Drupal CMS, is recipes. How many of you built recipes already? All right, it's about 20% of the audience, great. So recipes can install modules, themes, import configuration, perform configuration actions, and they do not have their own code or their upgrades. So they're basically automated site building steps, is what I like to say. It's going to be an entire talk about this tomorrow by Martin, so I highly suggest you go wake up tomorrow morning and attend Martin's talk. But this basically allows us to package up that experience that is required to pick those 100 things and tell you, like, this is the best practice solution for a certain area. And we used to have a solution for this that was called install profiles. How many of you used an install profile or distribution? Oh, like 70% of the room. Great. So you may have bumped into some of these problems with using install profiles. So first of all, install profiles are for the whole site. So if you install Commerce Kickstart, then you're good, but you now can't install OpenSocial. You're out of luck. We're sorry. So they are site scope. They lock you into the install profile that you had. Again, we improved this in Drupal 10.3, so you can get rid of the install profile if there are no more dependencies left, no more hard dependencies left of the install profile anymore. You can uninstall the install profile itself without destroying the site. But that's been a very long time coming to not lock you in there. But they still don't allow you to inherit. So if you have OpenSocial, you can make a specialized version of OpenSocial that inherits from OpenSocial and changes a few things. And they are not composable. As I said, you can't install multiple install profiles at once, so that's not possible. So those are things that we solved with recipes, or those are the things that recipes solve. Because recipes can depend on other recipes, so they can inherit from other recipes and reuse their functionality. They are composable. You can install multiple recipes at once. The Drupal CMS installer literally starts off with a selector of multiple recipes that you can pick, and it installs all of them. And they can be a site level or feature level recipes. The Drupal CMS has a base recipe that's a site level recipe with a bunch of content types, and then feature level recipes for all kinds of other things. And they don't lock you in, they just automated site building steps that are like, if you click through these links, then you get this result. The one thing that they don't have is an upgrade path, but the thing that you click through on the UI also doesn't have an upgrade path because you clicked it through. The components themselves have an upgrade path, all the modules have an upgrade path in there, everything, but the thing that you build yourself also doesn't have one, so this is not a thing that we got away from you. It's just a thing that we're not providing by default. And the site level recipes, there's a special case of site level recipe called site templates that Dries announced, and that's what we are working towards for Drupal CMS 2.0 for Vienna this year. So what we want to have is to have more market-specific site templates. So you can have like the food blog site template, that's Umami packaged up with its content and features. And then you can have a site template for real estate, like Dries explained, or you can have a site template for doctor's booking website, that kind of stuff. And that can package up best practice functionality from Contrib and include some sample content and include some configuration as well for this. So that's what we plan to achieve by DrupalCon Vienna, but what we have now is these feature recipes in Drupal CMS that you can check out. For example, Martin worked on this event recipe that provides easy event management out of the box, and it has content types and page and listings, so it bundles up a bunch of things that you would create if you would do events, has a map view, and builds on 3 other recipes and 11 contributed modules. And these are the 2 code slides that I will have, and this is tiny for you, so I highlighted this. But basically what happens here is that you have these 3 recipes, core recipes, document media type is a core recipe, and then Drupal CMS page and Drupal CMS privacy basic that are inherited in this recipe. These are the recipes that we depend on. And then we add all of these contributed modules. So these are best practice modules for doing events with geocoding information. So we already figured this out, we packaged this up, we provide this for you. And then we have configuration that's installed. I didn't highlight that because that's simple. What's more interesting is we have these configuration actions, which are like click here, do this, click here, do this. So what we have here is we grant the permission to the content editor to create events, delete event revisions, delete any events, and edit any event. We add the events to the editorial workflow, and we add it to the privacy feature as well. So this is all bundled up in this one recipe. And when you install it, then this will work with the privacy recipe and workflows, and it will provide these permissions to the content editor that's already there on the site. So it's super powerful, also not too hard to write. It's hard to figure out, I guess, what goes where. So as, again, Dries said in his session that it would be nice to, well, Boris said in the session that it would be nice to have a UI. And so there's some efforts into figuring that out. But this allows you to package up these features in a simple way. And site templates will not be very different from this. There's a bunch of stuff to figure out there of how we bundle the theme and the layouts and stuff, but it will be very similar to this as well. So in the role of this for Drupal core is to improve recipe creation and distribution and applicability and feature sets. So one of the unfortunate things that we have with recipes is that they're currently not multilingual. So when you have these config actions, you can have translatable values there. So we started working on that recently. And there's a bunch more config actions that are suggested so we can do more of these site building steps within the recipes. But basically, Drupal core's role is to enable this better so that people can create these packages and share their bundled up feature sets much easier. And one of the extreme things that we did with this is the Drupal CMS desktop installer or desktop launcher. So we announced this in DrupalCon Atlanta, and this is available on Drupal.org. This is a desktop app that works like any other desktop app. It runs Composer in the background, and then it provides you a UI to install these recipes and run with it. So we are trying to, once again, raise the bar at the start, raise the level at the start of satisfaction for users to make it easier to launch new Drupal sites. This was one of the parts of the goals that we had. And then the next part of the goal was to make it easier to extend the existing Drupal site. So this is where Project Browser comes in. So now you have a Drupal site, you maybe installed it with the fancy desktop installer or some other way. We're also working with shared hosts, by the way, to make it easier to install Drupal CMS there. We have contacts with the backend systems that they use. And so you've installed this, and now you want to add more features. So Project Browser was built to do this, and we bundle this with Drupal CMS as well. And so Project Browser allows you to pick more features that you want and click on an install button and install it with Composer in the background on your site. So it uses Composer with the package manager extension in Drupal core to install these. And it currently includes a recipe browser as well for bundled recipes in Drupal CMS. And now we are looking at how to enable to install remote recipes as well. So now you have this engine of packaging up features with country projects, and then you have this tool to install these features. So what feature needs to remain in Drupal core then? Like, what's it for Drupal core to have? So we are again taking a critical look at the modules in Drupal core, and I've singled out two here, contact and search, that are very easy to replace with contrib. So who is using core search module only? Anyone? No? Maybe I had one hand. So the maintainer of the search module, the core search module, Peter Lennon, apparently uses the core search module, which is good. It's a good sign. Unfortunately, there was no other hands. So people usually install Search API. But those that don't know that there's Search API, they will not use Search API and will not find it. So there's better solutions in Contrib for certain things that we have in core that are maybe more actively used, more flexible, more extensible, more compatible with other systems if you want to do that. And contact is similar. Drupal CMS ships with a contact recipe that uses web form as well. Once you have it, then you can create a bunch of other web forms or extend the contact form better with other elements. So there used to be this rule that Drupal core needs to have basic implementation of things to ship with. But now we don't need to have the basic implementation of a thing because it doesn't serve the actual user better to have it there, because we have these easy ways to ship packages of functionality with recipes and then install them with Project Browser. So we can have much less of these one-off things in Drupal core and much more of the recipes that configure general things in Contrib. So then, basically, Drupal CMS with recipes and Project Browser will focus people on these common modules. So instead of having all kinds of different solutions to problems, the recipes and the way to install them will enable us to converge on certain things. So tomorrow, Jürgen has a session on the privacy work that he did for Drupal CMS, and this is a great case study for this slide, basically. To converge on one solution, this Calero solution that they converged with maintainers of all kinds of different privacy modules, and they agreed that this is the best way forward. And now it's configurations of this Calero module that are there for setting up different privacy settings. So this will allow us to configure general purpose modules like web form and offer different forms up instead of having specific modules with all kinds of different form implementations. If somebody new to Drupal, they would need like a purple slider on their page. They would look for purple slider. They may find the purple slider module, they install it, and then a year later, they figure out it has security problems, nobody updates it to Drupal 12, and all kinds of other problems, and they start to complain, and they are right that this is not working well. But if they find the recipe that allows them to configure a slider purple with the best practice modules, that has an upgrade path and is more entrenched in the community and has better support, then everybody is better off at the end. So this is what I will expect is there's probably going to be less modules in contrib and probably a lot more recipes that configure these modules. And that also means that hopefully, because more sites will use the same modules, then the Drupal builds will be more similar to each other. So you will find a lot more of the same things on Drupal sites configured different ways. So when you get into a project, then you will have an easier time to get to know the parts and get to know your way around and work forwards from there. So that's hopefully a good benefit for you as well. And then there's automatic updates. Any of you use automatic updates or are looking forward to using automatic updates? All right, there's 2 of you, I think. That's a totally expected answer. So because Dev Days people are usually interested in automatic updates, but I will tell you why you should be. So this creates a staging copy of the site where composer operations are executed to update your components, modules, external dependencies, etc. And they apply to the live site when this is deemed ready, if everything goes well there. This can be manual or unattended on cron. So it's kind of unfortunate that it was named automatic updates because you can just use it manually or run it with a CI job or do all kinds of other things. And you can also integrate this with a Git workflow or whatever CI or staging workflows that you have. It has hooks to hooking into every single part of the process where it creates the composer environment or updates it or finds a problem or starts to update it to live. Like you can hook into every point in time and do certain checks and apply other things and commit the results to Git and deploy it to a dev server and do all kinds of other things. So this is very good, basically Drupal-focused UI and API on top of Composer. This is the 3rd UI on Composer that we mentioned today. There was the installer, the desktop installer, project browser, and automatic updates are all Composer UIs that we built. So that's basically updates code for you. What I think this results in is that because this is automating things this is making more sites update to newer releases, and this will result in more sites breaking with those updates, and that will result in maintainers having more awareness of when they're doing something wrong. So even if you're not using automatic updates, the results of people using automatic updates, not in this room, will result in more reliable updates in the contrib ecosystem, because they need to take into account that now these automatic updates will run their updates, and it needs to run, and it needs to be more foolproof and not crash when something is not in the database like they expect. So that's a benefit for everybody, even if you're not using automatic updates. And then the other side effect that we had with Drupal CMS is that we are embracing a lot of innovation outside of core. So we used to be all about like automatic updates is coming to core and project browser is coming to core, but I don't know if anybody noticed that we're not talking about that anymore. May or may not coming into core, but we are delivering it in the default package that we are offering everybody because we think that this is the best experience that they would use. Another thing that may or may not come into core, hopefully will come into core, but we'll see how we can do this, is the Gin admin theme, because this is another area where basically Drupal CMS embraced the whole movement in Contrib that people are using the Gin admin theme as a way better experience to administer Drupal sites. And Drupal CMS comes with Gin. And now the Claro theme is in Drupal core, but there's not that much interest in maintaining the Claro theme. And now there's this question of, do we work against the Claro theme or the Gin theme? So there's a lot of discussions in the core community team on how do we solve this? How do we get Gin into core, basically, or get Gin be the default admin experience in a way. But this is, again, a contrib contrib innovation that happened, and we didn't need Core's blessing for anything to do this. So I expect more of this will happen, and what Drupal CMS allows us to do is to pick the best contrib innovations there are, so we don't need to wait for that to get into Core or get whatever blessing. If there's a better solution for something, then Drupal CMS can change it and change the recipes, make a new release, and then it's available. And then the previous best solution will still be there in Contrib, and the new best solution is now the default experience in Drupal CMS. Another example of this is Experience Builder, which is again built in Contrib. So this will enable site builders without Drupal experience to easily theme and build their entire website. So this now you have the functionality with Project Browser and recipes, and now this Experience Builder is about building the pages and the listings and all kinds of other things. And so this will allow you to compose content on any part of the page. So this is what it looks like right now. If you don't believe me, then go here, the XP demo repo, and you grab the XP demo repo, you install it, and then you get this site with 2 sample pages and this JavaScript component here, this JavaScript component that's built in JavaScript and with CSS with the component editor inside Experience Builder. You can edit this component and customize it and change it on the UI of Experience Builder. So this is all built together in the XP demo. You can try it out and see where Experience Builder is right now. This is another innovation that we are doing outside of Core, and we think that will eventually should have a place in Core, because we think that baseline features that most sites or most site templates would want to use belong in Core, features that are defining the ecosystem. So that's where I came from with the multilingual initiative, for example. We built a lot of multilingual features into Core because we believed that the competing different solutions in Contrib were incompatible and hard to use. And I think Experience Builder is a good example of this, where you use paragraphs and layout builder and a bunch of other display solutions. And Experience Builder brings in the power of a lot of these and provides a framework that can reproduce the functionality of most of them pretty well. So then it belongs in Core. But it doesn't need to get into Core for you to start using it, much like Path Auto never got into Core and you've been using it for 15 years. So it's fine to use it. And the other advancement that Experience Builder is coming with is changing theming. So if you look at this XP demo, let's go back for a second. So if you look at this XP demo, this is based on these components on the side. So you have the CTA component and logos and hero and image and a bunch of other things, stats card. So it's based on components. And so this brings in to Core a whole new kind of understanding of how a theme should look like. It's not like you need to have sidebar 1, 2, 3 and footer wide and then footer left 1, footer left 2 and footer right 3 and whatever. Because now you're building this with these components and you're laying out your page and your global regions with these components. So it's a new approach to themes as well. And that's reflected in the XP demo, so you can go there and check it out. And so one thing that we are working on is to have a default design system that provides you with a set of components that's customizable as well to create these kind of pages. And Media Current is working on this, and they prepared this very short video that will hopefully play fine. So this looks like an ad, but they're working on this open source design system for Experience Builder that is, they are working with these 3 example sites that look entirely different, and they can still reproduce with the components and the flexibility that is in the design system. So that's super exciting. And they would also provide this, they would also provide you with an understanding of how these component-based theming could work in Drupal going forward instead of the themes that we had before. So this is gonna make a lot of change in the default experience of theming that people have. I'm not saying that I think the saying of the future is not evenly distributed is well said here, because some of you, or maybe a lot of you, how many of you work with component-based theming? Let's see. All right, so it's about half of the audience. So a lot of you work with component-based theming already. So I think the new thing here is that we are now bringing this to the default experience of Drupal that we are offering to people with Experience Builder and the new default design system. So another great side effect I think that we have with this is it's much easier to contribute to the default features than to contribute to Drupal core. So I don't know how many of you have a core change that it's in Drupal core, succeeded to get into Drupal core. Okay, that's about a third of the audience. How many of you tried but couldn't get a change into Drupal core? That's another third of the audience, yes. So it's not easy to get stuff into Drupal core. It's super rigorous, and that's for good reason, I think. But then you build a website and you add those 100 modules, and then you add 5 patches on top and whatever you need, because that's what you need for that site. And so here, we are building these recipes based on the same components that you already use. So you're already expert in how to use those components and how to build from those components. So it's much easier to contribute to this than the Drupal core. And this also results in faster innovation cycles. So that we can do this, we released Drupal CMS 1.0 in January, and now we're building for 2.0 in the fall. And we plan to have site templates and Experience Builder in 2.0. So there's a lot of change for what we are used to from Drupal core. But it doesn't mean that all the things that you built on 1.0 are not good anymore. They're still the best of at the time when it was available. So now that Drupal CMS can do all of these things this fast, I think the question comes up of, will Drupal core slow down then? And now that Drupal CMS can go so fast, and can Drupal core be more stable? And the answer is yes and no. So Drupal 12 is still planned for next year, still planned for middle or late next year, sometime when it's ready. However, Drupal 10 is also planned to be supported until the middle of late next year. So when Drupal 12 comes out is when Drupal 10 end of life is. And that is to allow core to still not go too slow and you to go slower if you want to. So this is how it looks like. So now we release new Drupal major versions every 2 years. So we had Drupal 10 in December 2022, and 11 in August, and 12 next year, and then 13 2 years later. So every 2 years, there's a new Drupal core release, but we support Drupal core major releases much longer than 2 years. So Drupal 10.4 went LTS last year, and then Drupal 11.4 will go LTS next year, and Drupal 12.4 will go LTS in mid-2028. And those are end of life 2 years later. So this is Drupal 10 is EOL when Drupal 12 comes out, and 11 is when 13, and et cetera, et cetera. So the idea is that you can be on an EOL you can be on an LTS version of Drupal core, and move to the next LTS version of Drupal core, and move to the next LTS version of Drupal core when it comes out. And the LTS versions of Drupal core are basically more focused on stability and not including disruptive changes anymore. So the core release cycle is now 4 years, and the first 2 years in the release cycle is where new features are being added. And the last 2 years of the release cycle is the LTS period when we get bug fixes and security fixes and backports only for things that improve the upgrade path. So the first 2 years is in the core lifecycle where the innovation happens in core, and the second 2 years is where it's LTS and more stable. And you can be on the second 2 years all the time and just go forward with the second 2 years. And the benefit of that is the whole contrib ecosystem is much more ready 2 years after the new major release. It's LTS, there's less disruptive changes. The field UI will not change on you and will not go into a modal dialog suddenly and stuff like that happened before in Drupal core. So changes like that will not happen. So you can be on a more stable Drupal core, and so we can get more stable for people being on Drupal core, while at the same time, we have Drupal CMS that can go much faster than Drupal core ever did. So I think we're getting the best of both worlds with this solution. So we expect people that more and more people will basically go on to move from Drupal LTS to LTS and have a more stable Drupal experience. And at the same time with Drupal CMS, we can release all the good things and the freshest, newest best practices for all the new installs that there are in the ecosystem and be super innovative while at the same time being super stable. So, okay, but I would always get this question of what about headless commerce and social and all kinds of other use cases that Drupal CMS is not covering. And Dries announced site templates for this and the marketplace for this. And while Dries announced the site templates, while we were sitting in the keynote in Atlanta, Ryan Zrama posted this in the CMS templates channel like 15 minutes before Dries was done with the talk, that the first site template is ready. Here, go, check it out. Major players are embracing this thinking. So Commerce Kickstart was already rebuilt based on recipes, and they have sample content and a theme and a bunch of other things. So while we don't have the exact format of how a site template will look like, conceptually, they believe that they are the first site template there are, and they're really looking forward to being able to sell these things on the Drupal marketplace as well. And also they are looking at extensions that are on the side of other site templates, for example, commerce recipes that extend recipes in Drupal CMS, for example, to sell tickets to events. So they are looking at these composable side recipes that can be added on top of other site templates. But there's also, Wunder has a starter kit for Next.js that's entirely recipe-based. So these are their recipes. And then Octahedroid has the decoupled Drupal, which is entirely recipe-based. So there's a bunch of solutions already that are recipe-based. And we are working on formalizing the site template formats so they can be put up as more accessible and easy to browse site templates as well for you to start with. So even though Drupal CMS had this specific market of the marketer, it doesn't mean that Drupal core can do more things and that the site templates on top of Drupal core can serve more audiences. So can we formalize what's the role of Drupal core in this whole ecosystem then? And yes, we can. And Dries basically told you about this in his Q&A yesterday. So we have an issue on Drupal.org, which is there on that URL. And so what we say here is that with the introduction of Drupal CMS, core no longer needs to serve as both a product and the framework. It can focus being on a framework while Drupal CMS can focus on being a product. And this framework would be a powerful application / platform for CMS builders. And the more detailed description is this. So that the core is the platform for building customized CMS solutions because we'll deal with content and user authentication and workflows and all kinds of other things that are critical for CMS. And the core can be a basis for advanced high-code architectures designed by skilled developers, including headless CMS solutions. So I think the Drupal CMS focuses on a specific audience that wants to have better usability because we want to increase the experience of starting out with Drupal, but it doesn't mean that Drupal itself doesn't want to keep all of the strengths that we already have. And I think site templates will help bring a lot of that more to the forefront, and for you to see that all of those needs are also served. And this is the updated under discussion strategy for Drupal core. So I welcome your feedback on that URL. And there's a lot more this week to learn about Drupal CMS things. So these are my highlighted talks of Drupal CMS for the week. So later today, Christina will talk about the Drupal CMS now and beyond, of what we did so far and the details of the plans that we have. Martin will talk tomorrow morning about recipes, a lot more detail about recipes and practical examples. And then Jürgen will talk about the privacy and data protection solutions in Drupal CMS and how we arrived at this common solution and how it's consolidating Contrib. And then Balint and Wim will talk about Experience Builder, a lot more details and a lot of developer content, and then building AI agents with code or no code or low code. Also highly suggested to learn more about how you can build these AI things as well. So yeah, that was my talk, and now I have, I think, 9 minutes for questions.
You had this slide about the like role for core. Maybe you can just go into that a little bit more, because, like, for example, a question for me is like, is there a place for standard profile in core, or is that part of the vision? Or because you talked about like Jin and Claro, does core need an admin theme? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Does core need any what?
An admin theme? I mean, if it's a framework, but it's just, I'm not, just your thoughts maybe, like what's the vision for that?
That's a great question of does core need an admin theme or not, yes. So what we think that Drupal core should have is the baseline of what the extensions are building on top. I think that with the advancement of Jin, more and more contrib modules started shipping with Jin specific styles so that they can look native in Jin. That's like, I went through that with upgrade status myself, and I looked at it and it was very bad, and then I actually started more reworking my module to use more standard Drupal things so that Jin it can look better in Jin. So I think it's important to have the common base layers in core that a lot of contribs need to be compatible with, because otherwise it's going to be a hard time to figure out what to be compatible with. At the same time, I think that when a lot of site templates include the same things, then that will be a good indication of what we should look at in terms of what's the 80% use case for everything. So I would think that an admin theme would be great for that, is that it helps with more contribs being compatible and looking nice on the UI. Do we need the standard profile? That's a great question. I'm not sure we need the standard profile. I would also like to see Umami as a site template and not in core anymore. Would be great as one of the first site templates. Would be a great case study. It doesn't even need a contrib module as it is right now, or it could be extended with other contribs, then be even better. So that would be a great case study to convert to a site template and not be in core anymore. So we can remove a lot of these things, I think, and actually do it better with the new solutions.
Thanks. I've got a question about recipes.
Yes.
How are we going to assess what recipes should we go on Drupal.org or so as recipes? Because as expert site builders, we already disagree on what best practices are for certain things. And it's also very easy probably to build a recipe with security issues, like giving permissions to users that shouldn't have them. So is somebody going to assess what's a good recipe?
I don't think there will be a human review process before recipes are published. There is also no human review process for modules. So I don't expect that to happen. I expect the community to gravitate towards the better recipes. So that's like for modules, that you have things, you have like several modules that do all kinds of like displays on your site, and then we still gravitate towards certain solutions. So I think that's more likely to happen. There's also, I don't think there's going to be one way to do, there's always going to be one way to do a thing. I think what recipes allows us to do more than core inclusion is for different ecosystems to coexist if they want, and then the better wins at the end. So it's not like we've added layout builder to core, so everything must be layout builder, because now the recipes will be able to use a certain thing, and then if a better solution comes around for that feature, then we can convert them, and the new sites can use the new, better solution from there on. So I think it enables more innovation, and you can do more things. I don't know if it's a different quality assurance question than the modules, because modules you can also do a lot of bad things. Especially now that AI-generated modules will be there. So that's going to be interesting.
Thanks.
Following on from the earlier question on Gin in core, do you think there's a danger that moving Gin into core would slow down its development and prevent, delay new features getting into it? And is it better off as in the contrib space when it can be included with a recipe very easily?
That's a very valid question. That's the same thing happened to other things that got into core. I don't know the answer to that, so I think that's part of the discussion of how do we ensure that still happens. Gin is, by the way, Gin is currently looking for sponsors. So if you have sponsor money, Gin, unfortunately, they lost some of their sponsors, and a lot of us rely on Gin. So if you have the possibility to sponsor Gin, that would be nice. I don't know the answer to that, but we are still discussing how to do that exactly. I think there would be a lot of value in getting Gin in for the reason of contrib compatibility, but we need to figure out how to balance the innovation that it can do in contrib versus that compatibility that we can achieve with being in core.
Thanks. Just following up on the last question, I suppose, because I think, Gábor, you were at the table yesterday when we were in the contribution room. We were having a conversation. Yeah, you were there. Just about like how around this and how, for instance, now that we're in a position where, we're more comfortable with Composer and Composer dependencies, potentially like one solution could be that Gin continues to live in contrib, but core just Composer requires Gin. And so that could be like a way where it gets into core, and that, as we move towards Drupal CMS, more core becoming leaner, that might be a way where for other modules where we want them in core, or even other core modules, they have their own project pages. And yeah, that's how they get into core. But yeah, a lot of options to think about, I suppose.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the options. That's the same question is about Experience Builder. Because likely Experience Builder will not be like copy-pasted as a code base into Drupal core. I don't think that's how it's going to happen. So Experience Builder is very much in that boat. And maybe we test that out with Gin first and then go with a similar approach for Experience Builder, like see how that works for Gin. But that's one of the options, yeah. And yesterday we talked about how ideally Drupal core could also split its modules into its own repos, either as a monorepo that has the splits out the different modules into different projects, and then Composer can reassemble it again for only the modules that you actually need. So there's a lot of potential there that we can do with Composer. But then again, we built 3 Composer UIs to make Composer easier to use. So I would contest that we are now comfortable with Composer because we're doing a lot to try to mitigate the problems that people have with Composer. So it's a balancing act there for sure. But we can do a lot more with being more composer native, yes.
Maybe a bit of a short-sighted question, so if that's the case, apologies up front, but I was wondering where the Drupal CMS is not basically a recipe itself. Because, yeah, if I understood correctly, it's a combination of what is being known as a good bundle of modules and configuration, basically. So why is it not just a very extended recipe itself?
So Drupal CMS is a collection of recipes. It currently comes as a composer package that depends on all the pieces there are to make it easier to install at install time. So I think the hard part of making it a recipe only that then Project Browser grabs all the remote dependencies and installs is that the installation itself will be much, much slower. So we currently package it up as a composer package with all the dependencies that we have for the recipe, and then you pick out things and it installs some of the dependencies that Composer already downloaded. That's for basically speeding up the installation process. It could be not depending on all of those composer pieces and just grab them as you install them, would be much slower to install. So that's a trade-off of how that happens. I think the site templates will need to deal with the same problem of if you have this installer thing that's like in Drupal CMS, and then the site template needs to grab in 12 different contrib modules real time with Composer, then it's technically solved with Project Browser. We can do it right now. On the UI, you click the install button, it grabs in the 10 country projects. It's just slow because of network and all kinds of other reasons. So that's why we have it as its own Composer project. But it's not a fork of Drupal. It's not a different code base. It's Drupal core and then all of these recipes that we bundle with the dependencies that we have to make it faster to install. We ran out of time, so I should let you go for your break. I'll be around all week. I'll leave on Friday night, so any questions or suggestions, discussions, concerns, feel free to come up to me and enjoy the conference.